Hello. Today we welcome Bill Collins, who will be sharing his perspective about the history of St. Joseph's Parish. Welcome, Bill.
Thank
It
you.
is indeed good to see you once again.
That's good.
So, Bill, you can take off your mask and I'll put mine on. And my first question, Bill, is when did you start coming to St. Joe's?
Shortly after I made my Cursillo in 1972 or 73.
Good.
It was basically because of Fred Magee. He was the chaplain on my Cursillo.
Yeah.
And then we spent a year running their weekly get-togethers, and so we got to know Fred very well.
Yeah.
And at one point, now I guess it was around the same time, shortly after, Fred phoned and said he was coming over to the house. He wanted to talk to us, so we were there with him, and he said, "How would you like to give up your summers for 5 years?" And our youngest at that time was about 4, around that age. And he told us what he wanted to do. He wanted, which is an oblate mission, really, that he wanted to build 5 cottages and convert the island to a summer resort for poor families.
And that was the start of Waupoos Island.
Yeah. And the first things he said, I want no limitations. We all know when a middle class family rent a cottage, they have total freedom, and so will we. And someone said, well, what about alcoholism? And I just said, well, this has nothing to do with us. We're not treating alcoholics. What do the middle class do?
Yep.
Do what they like, of course. And I said, yes, and so can these. And we did that all along. Fred and I on a Tuesday go over on the boat at the ferry to the other side, and we'd have a whole list of booze we had to buy for people asking for a bottle of this or a case of that. And then for myself, of course, that was very important. And so we knew we had to approach the Oblates because they were putting it up for sale. And I didn't know them very well, but I started coming down here to church because it was a good spirit. There was a spirit building that was dead in the church. Not as bad as today, but it was there. And Jane Williams was here. Beautiful sermons. Beautiful woman, did so much. And we got to know a whole bunch of the different oblates. And then Father Glenn Clark became a great friend of ours, and so he would take over when Fred wasn't there. Also Father Jack Davidson, and there was about 4 of us there. And the head of the oblates was,
It'll come to you later. Don't worry.
yeah. But anyway, so we met with the oblates, and we told them what we wanted to do. And the immediate reaction, of course, was Father McNeil. It was, no, but we're selling the property. And Fred would say, no, you're giving it away. that's what our mission is. And we had a long meeting because they could have made a lot of money out of that,
Yep.
especially at that time. And they said, well, how soon are you talking about? This is early May. He said, we want 5 cottages built by July 15th. And of course, you know what Fred was like. If he set his mind to something, poof, it was going to happen. So we decided, they said yes, we could have it. And we said, now just one more request. We'd like $35,000 to get us a start on raising money. We're going to use the Tupperware idea because people really love home masses right now. So we'll say have a home mass at your house on Wednesday night. You invite your neighbors and friends. Byrne would be there with his checkbook. And we had what we called pray, work, and play.
Yep.
So prayer, mass at your dining room table. Oh, people were real thrilled with this. This was something altogether new. And as soon as we'd finished the mass, that's the end of pray time. This is work time. We'll all have a drink while Bertie Benoit comes around to visit you to see how much money you've got and who would like to have the next one. And we were going 5 nights a week. Like, it was crazy. My kids talk about it now as we hardly ever saw you. But on that, my kids today are fantastic with charity. And I give all the credit to it, to the fact that we made that decision. It was a beautiful decision that we made.
Yeah.
And the Oblates were so supportive. We got the 35,000. We started the next week having people come down and work with us on the weekend. And lo and behold, we had 5 cottages by 15th of July. And it was really something because Cursillo and the Oblates were in it together, really. I would say St. Joe's Parish was, well, it was the base for Cursillo after you have Major Cursillo.
What Bill is alluding to is that after you make your Cursillo, usually on a Wednesday night, we'd have Mass and a social function after the Mass, where people would get to talk to one another and you'd meet other Cursillistas. And many of those, if not all of them, were held for about 8 or 10 years in the Hall of St. Joseph's.
And we actually turned, I would say, a middle-class church with sort of an air about it into a church interested in the poor.
Yeah.
And we had probably one of the richest women in Canada, Jane Williams, come along, and she was as high as a woman could get in the parish at that time.
Yeah.
I guess it's still the same. But it became our spot for those weekly meetings.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it just grew. So we started coming down here, even though we were way out in the West End, because we were bored to death. And I've got a reputation of telling priests, when you told me all this when I was 6 years old and making my first communion, for God's sakes, what can I do today? Anyway, so it was really the story. Jack Davidson, and Glenn Cart was so involved. Good man. And Fred's attitude towards poverty was the best I've ever known. Even at 85 years of age, I've never seen anybody who really loved Christ.
Mhm.
And he could see that Christ is about love and fun. It's not about always trying to catch people. And this was really heavy in the church at that time, this attitude of God goes around and tries to tempt you. Well, they called it the devil, but whatever. Tries to tempt you to see if he can get you. Like, instead of a God of love, it was a God of God of devil. Anyway, and we had mass every night down there because we took the one building, we converted it. It had but a chapel. We converted it, Fred mostly, I guess, into a playground for kids. The middle is a playground for kids. Nobody had to go to mass at night, but everybody was welcome.
Was this on the island, Bill, or on the farm?
This was on the island.
Okay.
I know a lot less about the farm, but it was another trip to the Oblates.
So you were on the island for 5 years with your
10.
family? 10?
Yeah, and I was head of the foundation for the 10 years.
The Waupoos Foundation, yeah.
Yeah. And we raised a lot of money. But boy, it was all well spent.
Yep.
And of course, the next story would be, there's the farm. Hey guys, let's people buy. Now we had about 4 or 5 oblates who were with us. So we had a better chance. And we had a couple, Basil, Ren, and Kathy, that were just perfect.
Now, if I may interrupt, Bill, the Oblates had a farm on Waupoos Island
Yeah.
for their novitiates. It didn't have the whole island, they just had part of the island where they had their farm. They also had a farm out by the Rideau Carleton racetrack, and this is the second Waupoos, is part of this story about the second Waupoos area that we developed for 4 families. They'll
Yeah.
continue.
Yeah, and incidentally, Waupoos meant rabbit, so we had a big rabbit at the dock, and this ferry that brought people back and forth. We had a bus service on Saturdays that picked the people up here. The bus, they'd arrive about 7 or 8 o'clock at night on Saturday, and we'd have to drag the ferry across. It's not a ferry, what do you call it? Anyway, he would drag it across, and we'd have to bring all the families in, and some nights if it was wavy, etc., that was a rough go, because these are people who have probably never been in a boat.
Yeah.
And my son Jim, who was about 15 or 16 then, he most often did that. Or Fred happened to be there with him too.
So Waupoos,
But we loved the Oblates. It was a mission that I liked. And incidentally, then when we did quit with Waupoos, by then we'd been going here to mass
yeah.
all the time. But when we bought our cottage, the cottage next to us went up for sale, and the Oblates bought it. So
You're very close to the Oblates for a long time.
and they would come down. I think Father McNeil came quite often, and somebody else. But the name of the game was drinks at your place on Saturday night, mass at ours on Sunday. Or if we have drinks at our house, then it's at your house on Sunday. And those were good days. That sort of deteriorated and they had to move out of it. The church was changing. The Oblates were the only ones that I could see that were changing with it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's about it.
Now,
I'm talking all the time, incidentally.
Now, Bill, you were also involved in other activities at St. Joe's. You're involved.
Both you and Basil and I started the supper club. We put up the supper
Supper table.
yeah, supper table. And I guess we all worked on that. I guess it was quite a good sized board. Again, no women, I think.
Yeah.
That's where, like, my wife was very much a feminist. And she didn't like it when she wasn't invited to the meetings, etc. But by then, my wife was chairman of the Women's.
Yeah. Center Foundation.
It was so confusing. There were so many things going on. Don McStravick was looking after all our books, etc. for years. He's gone now.
Yep.
Basil and Kathy started coming down here.
That's Basil and Kathy Wren.
Yeah. And of course theirs was a special love for the Oblates. I read a lot about their whole order. It was terrific.
Mm-hmm.
But somehow things didn't change. Like, and a lot of the seminarians came down and worked with us. So
Yep.
that was another big one.
Now, Bill, we have a picture of your wife, Bunny, up here.
Yeah.
And Bunny was involved with the Women's Center Foundation, directing it.
Yeah.
And at the Quality of Life Awards, which was initiated in the year 2000, you and your wife were the first two recipients of that Quality of Life.
Yeah. And I'm looking now at it because it was a chest of silverware. And you don't know what to do with all this stuff. It means so much to you and a little bit to the kids. And then after we retired, Mike St. John did us a beautiful picture, like painted picture of the center house when we went down there. And of course they all had to be repaired, and
Yeah.
I remember we were staying in center house and Penny Couture put a sign up in the bathroom that said, we never flush for number one. I'll think of it later, I'm sure. But basically it meant don't flush every time you have a pee.
Yeah.
And oh my God, there were so many beautiful days. And the Oblates had then formed Dignity
Yeah.
under another priest. He was a professor at the University of Ottawa, another Oblate father. And Dignity was for homosexuals.
Yeah.
And they came down. We never paid much attention to them. They never paid much attention to us. But we didn't want to spread around what it was, because It's so easy to start any of that stuff now.
especially at that time.
Oh,
Well, Bill, we're actually coming to a time to our end of our interview. We have a limited time period, but is there any last remarks you'd like to make?
yeah. I love the church, and I know the church has made a lot of mistakes in a lot of places. So have I. So have a lot of people. But it bothers me at the fact that young people just don't go to church anymore. I say to my family, look, if you want to go to the Presbyterian church, the Methodist church, even if you want to be a Muslim, I don't want you to go through life forgetting that it's what we do God's going to ask us about. He's going to ask me what I contributed to this world. Why did I keep you alive to 85? Because I've still got something more on the plate. I went to joined Habitat for Humanity, and my daughter's still involved in some committee down in Guatemala. Every one of my kids is into something.
Okay. That's good, Bill. And thank you very much for joining us today. This has been very helpful.
Well, I don't know. It's called meandering.